I love this conversation. Jordan's a friend. He's a Scottish auctioneer, everybody. Let's hear it for Jordan Campbell from Atlanta, originally from Scotland, from the St. Andrews area, correct? If I'm not mistaken.
More or less near Edinburgh, but I went to university
Mhm.
up at St Andrews. Yes.
Yeah, which is a whole nother story. I want to ask you about that at some point too, which sounds awesome and iconic. But everybody, Jordan's, a friend of HGA, and we've done work together and has a very, very amazing approach to live auctions, to engaging with donors, helping tell the story of the organizations that he has the good fortune of working with, Fund a Need, Mission Appeal, all that good stuff. That kind of all coalesce into that show, that entertaining piece, and that we call the golden hour of fundraising. And Jordan, spends more than an hour, of course, at these events, but we're gonna get in the weeds about the live auction and
Yeah,
ask
and
Jordan some awesome questions about that
yeah,
today.
and one of the things that we want to accomplish today is to help you to determine, the questions that you need to ask when you're hiring an auctioneer, because
Yep.
we're going to talk about what it takes to be an auctioneer, to be a great fundraising auctioneer now versus maybe what it was 20 years ago. And I think that's really good. But just above all, just a couple of little housekeeping. Make sure to stay to the end and win. We're going to give something away for everybody's here. If you're watching this on recording, be sure to give us a comment, like, share. Let us know if you're watching this on YouTube, and share this with somebody else. That's kind of what we ask. The fee is. It's free,
Yep.
but we do ask that you would share this with other nonprofit professionals. We want to get the information out. And we know a lot of people end up watching this on recording and listening to it and things like that. So we appreciate everybody being here, and especially Jordan taking the time.
Yeah.
So I want to just start and ask, just let Jordan. We'll give a little background information. But one of the things I've been thinking about this a lot, especially since last week, in several conversations I've had over the past 2 weeks coaching, and the thing that comes up is I think it's misunderstood sometimes how hard this is. And what I mean by that, I'm not trying to make it overzealous or anything like that, but I mean what the auctioneer actually does. And I'm talking about, on the good side, I'm talking about the professional fundraising auctioneer. What they do is a lot of times it's misunderstood because everybody goes, well, you're only up there for 30, 45 minutes and, you're out the door and everything. And why do they want to charge us so much money and all these things? And I would say that in my 30 years of doing, and I'm retired now, but in my 30 years of doing it, when I started, it was a lot simpler 30 years ago. I mean, literally I'd get up, hold the microphone. We'd have 15, 20 items. I'd sell them. And that was kind of enough show because there weren't that many fundraising charity auctions back then. Well, I tell you now, there's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's got a lot more complex. It's a lot harder. We have less items. We need to raise more money. We've got to do things like a fund a need. There's raffles and energy and things where it's more than just, the deal. And then something else I want to point out, and I'm going to bring Jordan into this for a second, is that there are different styles of auctioneers. Okay. There really are. So just because somebody says they're an auctioneer, it's kind of like somebody saying they're a doctor. And I think that's one of the
Right.
things that people miss a lot is they go, well, I need to have my appendix out. Yeah, I'm just going to call a doctor.
Yeah. I'm not
Okay.
going to go to a
Hey,
podiatrist. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You don't want to go to a podiatrist to have your appendix out.
Right.
You wouldn't want to go to a gastro to have, your eyes operated on. These things are very special. Now, does that mean that auctioneers can't do a breadth of things? They can. I've sold everything from dollar boxes of junk to $1 million airplanes, and I sold cars professionally for many years. But my skill in growing that, became over years to become a really good gala auctioneer, to be able to do that and understanding it. And I'm going to tell you, 20 years ago, I didn't understand it anywhere near then. I kind of did the thing. I got up and sold, but I was a good enough bid caller and I could hold the crowd and keep enough energy where it would go. But those things are different now. If I were to make the same approach that I did back then, now it would just be a big goose egg and it would really hurt the auction and the money that could be raised. So I want to get your input on that. Am I on base? Am I off base, Jordan?
Yeah, you're on the money. It's absolutely evolved over time and it continues to do so every day. I think the key to a good auctioneer is someone who can start guiding you throughout the journey from day one. And by that, I mean the consultation time it takes prior to the event. Sometimes I'm dealing with small and relatively new nonprofits. Sometimes I'm dealing with huge, huge ones. And the idea is to put the committees, put the board members, anyone who's involved in the event management and the event production into the shoes of the guest and take them through everything, every touch point from the second they arrive at the event through the cocktail hour, uh, and obviously prior to the event, the marketing materials, the showing off of the live auction, and so on, is to address every single touch point because there's nothing bigger than the small things at these events. All those touch points that allow every guest to essentially be primed so that when I ultimately go up on stage, my job is a lot easier. Guests know what live auction items to expect. Guests, by the time I do the fund and need, they know what they're raising for. They feel the emotion. You've done the emotional appeal before the fund and need when you're asking for donations. They feel the cause in every single fashion. And so my job is to really take and lead our clients and our nonprofits through the whole process to identify who is your audience, who are they really, what's the demographic? Is it a simple demographic such as 50-50 male to female? What age ranges are we talking about? How did it go last year? What went well last year? What went not so well last year? How can we address those problems and really amplify the opportunity? So an auctioneer, in short, an auctioneer's job is to prime everyone prior to it. And then when getting up on stage is to really allow the audience to feel that this guy is not, or girl, is not an outside hire. This person is really part of the organization
An
through an
extension.
emotional level. Yeah, exactly, Trevor. An emotional level, an extension of the cause. So every single touch point counts. And of course, as an auctioneer, a good auctioneer run on stage, it's not just about raising money. That, for me, is the byproduct of the entertainment portion. So if you are entertaining, if it's somewhat performative, yes, but if the audience is engaged and listening to you, they resonate with the cause. And that means ultimately they give money. That's the easiest way. If they're enjoying themselves, because they're spending their hard earned money on a Friday night, Saturday night, Thursday night, whatever day of the week it will be, on the tickets to go, whether it's tickets or whether it's sponsorships for their corporates that's being represented there. And they're taking the time. They're getting all dolled up. They're getting ready for a night out.
Yeah.
They want to have a good time. They don't want to just be spoken to and spoken at. They want to feel part of the cause. And my job is to get in amongst the crowd, rev them up to a certain extent, whereby it's not just me on stage. Everyone is in it together.
Yeah. I love that. Unpacking a little bit of that, and I want to get in the weeds a little bit more. Two things speak to me immediately. One, it sounds like it's a science now,
Mm.
right? And like Jason said, and we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks now, and you've been spending a lot of time with us, Jordan. So thanks again. But we're talking about how to pull it off. It's obviously not impossible. We're not trying to make this daunting, but it is difficult. There's a lot going into it. So I almost get that there's a scientific approach. When you start saying things like demo and who's going to be, you know what I mean, male, female, and all this stuff. I mean, that's scientific to me. There's an
Mm.
equation and a practice and a methodology here. And another thing that I want you to speak to too, because you do this so well, and I think it's imperative now, and I think Jason would agree because we see this at events that are really knocking out of the park with their live auction and events that you're involved in where you always knock it out of the park. There has to be an entertainment factor. Obviously, you want to pull them in emotionally, but like you said, we're all part of this together. It's kind of like when the home team hits a home run and everyone jumps in the air. You know what I mean? Simultaneously, and you hear that roar. That's kind of what you're. I'm not kind of. That's what you're trying to create. That we're trying to create this home team atmosphere, but it has to be entertaining. It really is a show. They call it a running a show for a reason, and I know that's something that you really excel at. So, I mean, speak to both those things if you don't mind, because those are my two big takeaways right
Well,
away.
yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Trevor. It has to be inclusive
Yeah,
because you have to remember a lot of these guests that go there on their night out, they might not know anyone there. It
yeah,
might just be a couple or a single
yeah,
person going there and they don't know
yeah,
anyone. So every single touch point from the beginning when they arrive at the cocktail hour has to be catered
yeah,
for lack of a better term.
yeah.
Whether
Spoken
during
to.
the
Yeah,
cocktail hour, you see the live auction items all beautifully displayed, the boards are up.
yeah,
You have volunteers, or you have one of my team, my bid spotter team. They go around and they mingle with the audience and sort of touch base and say, hey, you see that live auction item? A lot of people are talking about it. Are you interested? That sort of thing. And you
yeah,
see their eyes light up. And so immediately you have that connection. And my job is to go around identifying who those influencers are, who the people that showed interest more than others in certain live auction items, so that when I'm on stage, I can remember their name, I can point them out, have a bit of back and forth and banter with them. So
Yeah.
that is important, but you're absolutely right. The psychology behind it is sometimes overlooked.
Yeah.
And that could be something simple as the psychology behind the order with which you put the live auction. There is a cadence, there is a bell curve that is very, very important. Never have your most expensive item first. It's just off the top of my head.
Sure.
Perhaps your last item is something a bit more quirky, a bit more accessible in terms of price point
Great.
to everyone. And then during that is building that momentum. Because the way I see it, these galas are all about an emotional roller coaster.
Mm.
How, as me as an auctioneer, how can I take these lovely guests through a perfect journey throughout the evening? And that starts obviously with the run of show, having a seamless run of show, which is what I work with my clients, is to
Mm-hmm.
make sure every speaker that's on stage is somewhat succinct, because we always run that risk of people going on and on for quite a long time. And
You give folks
short
a
of playing,
microphone, you never know, man. You don't
that's
roll the
it.
dice. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Short of playing them off stage with the Oscar music,
Yeah,
it's difficult. So making sure every single thing is aligned and segues perfectly, because the run of show should be a story that you're telling. It should
totally.
thread together seamlessly. And that is the most important thing to harness at the beginning. The live auction for me is when I come on, probably just after dinner. There's no distractions. All plates are cleared. The bars are closed. When I bring up the energy in the room. I have
Yeah.
back and forth with the audience. The idea is to get them hysterical to a certain extent.
Yes.
They're excited. Some of them might not be bidding, but the ones
Yeah.
that aren't bidding, I remind them to be cheering for those who are. And if
Awesome.
someone on your table's bidding, go crazy. Make sure your table's the best one. And then the competitive, natural human instinct comes in to try and outdo each other.
I
So
love
you
that.
play to that. And by the time you get to the end of live auction, the idea is their energy is high, high in the sky. Then you're about to go into the fun and need, that
Mm-hmm.
emotional appeal where you're talking about the why. So
Mm-hmm.
you take that high energy and convert it into an emotional energy.
Yeah.
And by using that emotional energy, you still have their attention, their hearts are still beating and pulse is still racing after that energetic moment, but it's converted into a more tear-jerking emotion, whether
Totally.
it's a nonprofit that's representing cancer or arthritis or adoption agencies, whatever it may be. The idea is to convert that energy into more of an emotion in order
Totally.
to, you're almost wanting to make, and this sounds horrible, but you're wanting to make the audience cry.
No,
Because
it doesn't sound horrible. I totally get it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
exactly, if I feel it on stage, and my role is to really research the calls beforehand, not be
Right.
some guy that just comes in and says the same old cookie cutter stuff that he says every event. I try
Right.
and tailor make that speech, that emotional appeal, put in a really powerful quote from a famous person in history that really emphasizes what we're looking for in the evening.
Yeah.
So there's so many psychological points throughout the evening, whether you're selling multiple times consignment items for live auctions, or whether you're asking for donations directly. You've
Right.
got to give them that tangible outcome that
Yeah.
when they go home at night and they've just donated $5,000 to the fund in need, they want to do two things. One is know that, wow, my $5,000 exactly helped 10 people, 10 children battling battling cancer, battling leukemia, battling whatever it might be,
Yeah.
something that's tangible so they can go home that night and rest easy going, that's how I changed. The
Yeah.
second thing being, of course, if their husband and wife happens to look at their bank account, they've got to be able to explain why $5,000 has got out of their thing.
Right.
So you want to be able
Or
to give
their
them something
accountant.
tangible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They
Yeah.
can't go home and say, hey, my baby, I just raised 5,000. Sorry, my $5,000 went towards some research, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
got
I
to be
want
something
to I want to
specific.
stop you right there.
That's
I
so
want to just
good,
build
Jordan.
on
That's
that.
so good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
something we talk about a lot, and
Yeah.
I think what your point is you're converting the donation into impact. What is the impact of my dollar,
So
whether it's
good.
$100 or 100,000?
Yeah.
I know that I sent 100 kids to camp, or I paid for 100 minutes of research, or I whatever that is, and there's not one nonprofit here, not one of you, that cannot do that same thing. There's multiple ways to do it. We work with organizations all just to figure out that message and what it is, because they go, well, we've kind of got this and we do that. And there's some simple ways to do it, because you're trying to just let your donors know what that impact is. Because just like Jordan said, when they go home and they don't sit back and go, oh, you know what I did? I gave them $10,000. They don't think that. They go, I sent 10 kids to camp. I sponsored 10 kids going to that camp. And that's a really simple thing. And I know not everybody's got what you're raising funds for, but all of your missions are important. And when you do that with your donors, that lets them become a stakeholder in your organization,
an investor,
an investor. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions.
That's big. That's huge, Jordan. Because
one of the things
need to hear.
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, folks need to hear it. It needs to be. It's becoming ever more popular. Obviously, I think that a talking point, popularity aside, it's becoming a very, very strong.
Everything,
but it has to.
Whether you're whether you're selling a sponsorship table, you're underwriting, you're asking for something for, you're getting a match gift for the fund to need. Everybody in your organization needs to have those numbers, and that's why it's so incredibly important. And something I want to point out what Jordan just said. Because I started off saying, everybody thinks, well, that auctioneer is just going to get up for 30 minutes to the microphone. That's the party at the end. All the other preparation that goes into it,
is the science.
6 months before, whenever you have that first consultation, in 3 months, in 2 months, in 1 month, and then the night of. A great fundraising auctioneer is not just going to take the microphone and go, yeah, I got it, and sit over there and have swill cocktails. They're going to be moving. They're going to be moving around, talking to people, doing stuff. I know an auctioneer, he stands in front, they put all the live auction, he stands in front of the live auction table when everybody's coming by and looking at stuff. And he goes, hey, and he starts answering questions. And that way he's doing the same thing what Jordan talked about going around. He's putting names with faces, meeting people, letting them know, because it's kind of a uncanny thing. We can tie back to remembering that person. You look at the person, they're in the back row, but I can see them and I see that look in their eye. And Jordan can tell you the same thing. Half the time we know they're going to bid before they do, because we can see it and we've seen it over and over. And when your auctioneer is doing that kind of preparation, that's when good things happen.
Absolutely.
The difference between, if you've been struggling with that and you go, man, my auctioneer just shows up 30 minutes before the auction, holds the microphone, does it, drops the mic and walks out the door, and I wrote him a check. Maybe there's something to do there. And I'm not bashing anybody.
You bring up a really good point, Jay. And I mean, we want to talk a lot about like do's and don'ts a lot of times. And I want to pepper some questions on Jordan too, about, what he thinks about placement. A lot of these things are opinions based in experience, and they work. But I also want to tell folks that if you're not having these conversations with your auctioneer, if you don't have someone as invested as Jordan in your mission and learning it and preparing and meeting people and doing all those things that Jason talked about and Jordan are talked about as well, that he does at every single event, then there's a problem. And you need to be prepared to ask these questions and ask this out of your auctioneer, or when you're interviewing multiple auctioneers. This should be part of the line of question. He's like, will you be doing this? Will you help us sell these live auction items before the live auction? Will you be meeting our donors and supporters and what have you? And will you be preparing, that mission message or speech, well in advance and getting to know us? And that should be, pretty obvious, right? But I don't think it is for a lot of folks right now. You know what I mean? So
I want to just say, I want to ask Jordan if you've had this. So in my entire time of doing it, I typically got 2 questions. The first question, are you available on this date? And the second question, what do you charge? Never did I get another question. And I should have. Many, many times.
Yes.
I never got another question.
Yes.
And it just, it astounds me. I'm going to just get on my soapbox for just a second, that you could work so hard. These things are hard to do. Y'all all know it. You would work so hard to get all your committee, your board together, to bring all these people together in one, have everything just right. You've got the donations, sold the tables, done all this. And then you've got somebody that, you're about to have a brain surgery and you've got a podiatrist.
Yeah.
Well, that's
it. Go Jordan. Go Jordan. Try getting a word in with us, Jordan. Go ahead.
No, I love it. I love it. The passion here is palpable. I mean, it's so often I hear, well, my neighbor Bobby Joe is really good on stage and he loves speaking, and he's free. He'll do it for free. No, there is something to be said for the right auctioneer. There's so many things. Obviously, as you said, Jason, then the lead up is directing him in the right way. All those touch points that you have to cover. are so important. And I don't tell on those first client calls where they're essentially, you know, that they want to find out what your fee is before anything. I don't talk about my fee till the end. I'll have a half-hour free consultation where I ask some questions. Okay, what does a successful event look like to you? If you're an audience member, if you're a guest, when you leave the event, what are the kind of adjectives you want to use to describe what you just experienced?
Great
So I
question.
can understand every single part of it, because then I might not be the right fit. There's
Hmm.
no point in selling myself if at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I'm not the right fit. They might be
Hmm.
looking for someone completely different. Um, but it's important to ask the right questions. And then when I do say my fee is, I simply say, well, quite frankly, is all it takes is for me to raise one or two more paddles and you've covered my cost.
Yeah,
And the
it's the
beauty of
truth.
that is that, you know, fortunately to this day, I'll quickly toot my own horn. Every single client I've worked for the first time, we've broken their previous records.
Yeah.
And that is not just about me, it's about me helping to prepare the whole event to be primed for success. I'm not the one building the event. I'm not the one doing the whole run and show and so on. But I'm the one to be able to prompt them as to how to perfect it.
Mm-hmm.
So all the work, most of the work on that side is with the client, but my job is to make sure that we're in the right direction. So it is truly important to get the right auctioneer. It's truly important to have an auctioneer that people in the audience like. Why? It was because if the first 5 minutes there's something that rubs you up the wrong way about the auctioneer, you're going to switch off. If the auctioneer is too forceful in asking for money, if the auctioneer is a little bit rude, which is sometimes can happen, you know, and they don't mean to be. It might just be a case of having a rowdy crowd and the word shut up slips out
Yeah.
their mouth.
Yeah.
You know, there are tactics for quieting down a rowdy
Mm-hmm.
crowd that still make you appealing and affable to the audience. So I think it's really important. And going back to meeting the guests during the cocktail hour, it's not just about those who you meet. Oh, I've met Bob, I met Mary. Oh, well done, guys, you're bidding. But it's about who they tell at their table. Oh, that's the auctioneer. We just met him or her. They're great. They're really talking up this.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, your microphone just quit, Jordan.
Oh, Jordan, we just got to plug the mic back in. Sorry, brother. Uh-oh.
A
Hey,
Uh,
Jordan.
lot.
oh, there you
Oh,
go.
no, it came
Okay.
back. There
Woo.
it came back.
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry. We
there.
lost you for a second with the mic. Sorry, brother.
Okay, I was just saying my style is running out into the crowd,
Mm-hmm.
is to engage everyone in the audience. So as we said earlier, they feel part of it. So that
Yep.
anytime someone donates, I'm looking them directly in the eye. If I have the opportunity, shake their hand to thank them. And they feel that because we all know, I've been at an auction before years ago where I wasn't the auctioneer, I was a guest. And whenever I put up my paddle, there's an empowerment to that. It's quite cool. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just a nice feeling because
Yeah.
you're helping. And so I want that to be acknowledged. And the more you acknowledge it, you'll find the more they put their paddles up.
I
You know,
love that.
I want to
That's
touch
great
on something
feedback.
that you just mentioned about because this is something different between myself and Jordan. Now I'm not saying I never did. There was to be times that I might hop down off the stage and go, but I was more of a person to stay up on stage and work the crowd that way. There's nothing wrong with that. Just like there's nothing wrong with Jordan's style about moving around. It's just a different style.
Mm.
But what I want to talk about for a second is there's especially when you're interviewing auctioneers and you're trying to figure out who's the right fit for you and what it's going to be. There's a couple of things that I've heard people say, and this is a really good indicator to understand where you're at with your auctioneer. I know this about Jordan, like myself. It is not about me. Now, you know, I try to dress the part and play the game, play the deal, and be big up on stage and do all those things, and I'm trying to gather attention, but it's not about me. I don't have rock music playing in my picture up on the thing, and that was just never my style. I wanted to go up and do this. That's all, you know, unless the organization wanted to do something like that. But it's about the event and the cause. And one of the things that just really just it's frustrating. It's frustrating. It doesn't make me mad or anything like that, but it's frustrating when I hear an auctioneer say, "Well, this is what I do. This is what I do," as opposed to saying, "This is what I've seen. What's been successful for my clients." Because see, when they start talking about themselves, it's about them, and they're making it about themselves. But when they're talking about what they've done for their clients, then you know it's what they're going to do for you, and that's the mindset. And there are some auctioneers out there. I literally had one. He goes, "Well, that's my party trick. Well, this is why I do it because it's my party trick." Like, I don't care what your party trick is. I don't care. What I want you to see is for you to raise the maximum amount of dollars that are possible for the event.
You're absolutely right. That's what gets lost in the mist sometimes, lost in the fog is uh, ultimately your aim is to raise as much money as possible. Now, of course, you could argue that, well, no, it's for them to engage with the cause, it's them to have a good time. Well, yeah, if you do those two things, then you're going to raise as much money as possible.
Right.
It's as simple as that. The more entertained they are, and I don't mean me up on stage or any auctioneer up on stage, singing and dancing and playing the clown. I mean that they feel part of it. They really, it feels like we're all bidding together at the same time. Anytime someone raises up their paddle, go on, cheer. If you're not raising, cheer, ladies and gentlemen, get involved. And people are cheering, they're having a drink, and it becomes one big party, but a party where they actually pay attention. Because too often at these galas, you have a party and people are drinking, have a good time, and they're not listening to what's going up on stage. Yeah. So a good auctioneer commands the audience in a respectful way, of course, but commands the audience's attention naturally. By using the right words, by using the right intonation and articulation on certain words, by knowing when to speed up, knowing when to slow down, knowing when to keep that momentum. Sometimes my bid spotters come up to me, or my clerk that writes down the bids, or the mobile bidding platform companies, the Qtegos, the GiveSmarts, and so on. They come up to me and say, "Well, great job. We got so much raised, but can you slow down a little bit?" Because we're trying to, which is fair. It's a fair point. Fortunately, we voice record all our events. So in case there's a discrepancy or someone's had a few too many drinks and they forget they bid, we've got that. But the idea is if I slow down, and I'm not saying I'm as fast as a cattle auctioneer or a real estate, no way. I'm still slow compared to them. But you keep that momentum. You're literally surfing this wave of energy, and as an auctioneer, the exact point in the night when everything is this perfect storm together of raising funds. So you just feel it in the room, the apex of the evening. And that's when you really push the button. That's when you really go for raising more funds. And, like I say, I want people to come up to me afterwards and go, "Oh, that was awesome. That was a great job," because that means we've raised funds.
It worked.
Yes. Ego wise. Yeah, of course it's nice to hear.
Yeah.
But as Jason, you hit the nail on the head. It's about the organization. I'm in this to help these organizations. The better I am, the more run the funds are raised. So it's all about them. It's all about who we're helping. And if I can convey that in a genuine, authentic fashion, then you're onto a winner. And that 100%. Is the auctioneer's job, particularly during the emotional appeal, to not be inauthentic, to be someone I've cried on stage multiple times. And it's not, I wish I could act crying. That would be, then I'd be in Hollywood. But it's for real. The tears are real because I've researched the cause. I've researched what the money and how the money will impact. And so when I'm speaking up on stage, it gets to me too. And I have to sometimes stop myself because no one wants someone on stage that can't speak because they're blubbering. But I think the audience can feel that too. Yeah. And I think that's the most important thing. If they think, well, he really feels it, I feel it too.
Yeah. I love that.
Well, it's that transference of emotion, that comes from whenever the person up on stage. And that's on both sides. Not only is it that heartfelt emotion, like in tears, but also in joy and all the other stuff that comes out. And that's where you're trying to get to. Jordan,
sounds like you'd be exhausted after a few of these.
Oh man, I say to my wife says to me, what time do you get to bed? Like, because she's in bed by the time I get back home.
Right.
Normally I get home around 10:30, 11 at night, unless I stay and mingle and things like that, which sometimes can be later. I can't get to sleep till about 2 or 3 in the morning.
Right.
I put on Netflix, but my adrenaline's still pumping.
Yep.
And as I said to you last time, I think Trevor, I look at my phone because my phone, I wear the kilt.
And the steps.
The steps. I do about 13 to 15,000 steps. And that's not just on stage. That's walking, mingling. That's going back and forth, doing the sound checks and everything like that. But I'm absolutely, as we say in Scotland, I'm absolutely knackered.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's so worth it.
Oh, I
Yeah.
know. It's awesome. I Jay, you had a point to that? I had a
Well,
couple questions I want to
I'm going to
hit with
change. I
Jordan
want to
on.
go ahead and finish your point because I'm going to change gears in a second and ask him another question.
Yeah, I got some more questions too. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Buckle in, everybody.
you mentioned, and this is something that comes up a lot, and we hear people talk about it, and I've heard it over the years about having bid spotters. So give me
Mm,
your take on bid
good question.
spotters.
Good question.
I think they're hugely important if you have the right ones.
Hmm.
There's so many different types of bid spotters, different auctioneer bid spotter team styles. Some are very much, yep, the sort of almost cowboy-esque, they've
Mm-hmm.
got the hats on, and I think that's really cool. It doesn't align with my style, but I think it's really cool for other auctioneer style,
Hmm.
because they're involved. But I think they're hugely important in that they are an extension of the eyes and the ears of the auctioneer, not just physically in terms of if I don't see a bid paddle go up, my bid spotter will help me out, but also to create the atmosphere in the area of the room in which they are working. They're thanking the donors. They're, revving up the bidders. If there's two bidders at two tables next to each other, they might be whispering, "Are you going to take that? Are you sure you can, not bid a wee bit more?" And they tease them a little bit within reason. You can't push them too far.
Totally.
But my bid spotters are an extension of me. I call them the Bonnie Lassies. They're three ladies that I take with me, and two of them are British. We're based in Atlanta,
Yeah.
and they wear the tartan sashes,
Yeah.
so that we're all somewhat color coordinated or somewhat coordinated as a team. When we're walking around and I've got the kilt regalia on, they've got their tartan sashes. We know that's the auctioneer team. We know who to approach from afar if we want to talk about the live auction or what we're raising for. So I think the bid spotters are hugely important. My style, because I run around a lot, it might not mean they're absolutely 1,000,000% essential, but I think they're truly, truly important,
Yeah.
because it really does help add that atmosphere to the room. But Jason, everyone's different with the bid spotters, I
Mm-hmm.
believe.
Well,
Yeah.
I know some people
Agreed.
that don't use them at all. Some people that do. Some people don't, and back and forth. I always had always wanted them, and I always wanted professionals that I worked with that I knew that we understood, just like what you're talking about,
Hmm.
because that it truly is, and it's that extension of somebody, and they're negotiating while I'm over here talking to this person. They've got the bid. They're sitting there going, "Yeah, I think we're there. We might be, but you're still good. Oh no, we're not. Here we go." And being that translator and helping the way. I think they add tremendous value to your event and just in every way that Jordan said, because they add excitement, energy. They bring that because sometimes you've got one part of the room that's really, there's nobody really there bidding, but those people still need to be engaged as well. And you got somebody that's clapping and talking and, hey, let's go. I need some help over here. And they can see, and they'll see somebody where maybe we from whenever I'm just talking for myself, where if I was at the stage and I couldn't see them, but they're looking at somebody and they see it and they see that want and they go, "You really want to do this, don't you?" And they go, "Yes, I," and they raise that paddle up. And
Exactly.
and it also just becomes an additional set of eyes. When you've got 400 people in a room, 600 people in a room, it is hard to see them all.
Yeah.
And it really becomes an extension. So I appreciate your input on that because
Yeah.
I personally agree. I know that some people don't. We've got
Hmm.
friends of ours that are great auctioneers, raise a tremendous amount of money, and they don't use them. I've also had people that say, "Well, I'd really like to use a volunteer," and I just want to get your take on somebody says, "Well, we've got some volunteers to do it," because
Hmm.
I've got an opinion, I've got experience on it, but I want to hear yours too,
Yeah.
Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, number one, you would have those professional bid spotters that have at least done it many times before, so they know how to approach things. They know the hand signals, all the simple things or the little things that you develop over time being a bid spotter. I'm not against using volunteers. If we do, there's certain clients that have volunteers at hand, and so what we do is we add them to my bid spotter team.
Mhm.
Obviously, we know they won't be as impactful bid spotters as the professionals, but at the same time, it's great to include them because the audience also sees that they're part of the organization or the cause. Whether it's a student, certain causes, they use some of their students or some of their beneficiaries of the cause who love having a good time. So I think it's great. It's inclusive in that way. Obviously, I train them prior to the event when I do the the AV sound check and so on, we'll huddle up with all the team of bid spotters, including the volunteers, and train them, give them a pep talk. But yeah, I think obviously it was more impactful having your own, or the ones that are well versed in being a bid spotter. But I see no problem with using volunteer bid spotters.
Cool. Thank you.
Good feedback.
All right.
Can I get on with my? I got some. I want some
Yeah.
more opinions. I want some
Fire
more
away.
opinions. Yeah, yeah. So, and Jordan, I've asked you this question before, but I know that, and there's no not necessarily a right or wrong answer, of course. You said a few things. I wanted to recap. Super important to advertise live auction items beforehand. Super important. Pre-event, during the event, on easels, previews, the whole nine. So we're on the same track there for sure. And I just want to really, really encourage folks to make sure there's no surprises with regard to live auction items and that you're advertising those well in advance and at the event. You said something really, really cool about item placement that I think people need to put particular detail towards and thought towards. You said don't have your most expensive item first. Kind of if you have a quirky, dinner item or what have you, or flight with an astronaut, maybe make that at the end or something like that. So I thought that was really, really great. And that's been rooted in a lot and years of experience with you doing live auctions, is really making sure placement is key, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There is a bell curve, as I mentioned, where
Yeah.
it's good to, if you've say got 7 live auction items, your fourth or fifth should be the big ticket item in terms of price.
Cool.
Um, the first one should be more of a subtle intro into it, because if you go in with your largest, biggest ticket item first, that first one is when it's kind of like when you're doing anything in life, you don't want
Yeah.
to be the first person to do it.
Right.
So if
Right.
you've got a buffet and if you've got a
Yeah.
buffet at a
Yeah.
dinner and they say, "Oh, go and help yourself to the buffet," everyone's looking at each other, going, "Who's going to go
Yeah.
first?" I don't want to be the person that goes first.
Right. Right.
So have an entry level as your first live auction
Love it.
item, so that everyone in the room thinks, "Well, I'm going to have a wee bid here." As I said
Yeah.
to you last time, a wee flutter, and just
Yeah.
put up your paddle for $500 or $1,000, whatever it
Right.
may be, to get people involved. Because once you put up your paddle once, you've already broken the seal, for lack of
That
a better
pain.
term.
Yeah. That pain.
Yeah,
You're over the pain.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
over the
Yeah. Yeah.
pain, and you're more likely to put it again. But having a diversity, and I think I mentioned this last time, but diversity in two things in your live auction items. One is diversity in type.
Yeah.
If you have 7 live auction items, 2 should be maybe an international trip. 1 should be a golf outing. 1 should be some sports related, going to, in our case, Atlanta Braves, or going to watch the New York Knicks, or whoever it might be.
Mhm.
And then 2 of them might be something completely unique and something completely different. And secondly, diversity in costs, what the predicted, final bids will be.
Yeah.
So you have that Goldilocks effect of the big ticket item, that's six, seven, $8,000 plus. Then you have the middle, which is $4,000 or $5,000 plus. Then you have the lower one, that porridge that everyone can have, between $1,000 and $4,000.
Good for you. Yeah.
So it's important to have that really well laid out. But what I'm seeing mostly in the past couple of years is those consignment items that you can sell multiple times. I think in the last 4 events, there's certain trips I've sold maybe 15 times. And the key here is to understand there is a stigma around consignment items in the market. I completely disagree with the idea that oh no, we have to spend money to buy consignment items. I don't quite want to do that. Well, yeah, of course you do, but you only spend the money on those consignment items if you sell it.
Yeah.
And if your auctioneer is good, they're going to sell it for an absolute minimum over the cost,
Yeah.
whether it's $1,000 over the cost or more.
Yeah.
And so, and if you, an even better auctioneer will know and read the room in the middle of the bids to go, wow, okay, there's 10, 15 people with their putting their paddles up.
Mm-hmm.
I can either stop the bidding at $2,500 now, or continue until we get the final winning bid. And the winning bid could be $8,000.
Yeah.
Or I could stop it at $2,500 and sell it to 15 people.
Yeah.
So that net profit far outweighs that one-time $8,000 net profit.
That's awesome.
So that is the key. You kind of do a fire sale. It gets everyone involved.
Yep.
People are keeping up their paddles. What, $2,500 to go to Mexico for 7 nights? Boom, I'm in.
Yeah.
That sounds too good to be true. And it's when it sounds too good to be true that you do obviously reassure them that this is for real.
Yeah.
and they take advantage. They really
Yeah.
do, because it's in the interests of the cause. They're making a lot of money through it. It's in the interest of the guests who are going to benefit from this. It's a win-win.
Yeah.
So I cannot emphasize that enough. The importance of being able to do that, but the right auctioneer knows how to do that right,
We want
because
to, yeah,
it can go wrong,
absolutely.
if you don't communicate
Absolutely.
it properly.
Well, we,
We see it go wrong about once a week now, Jay, probably at
Wow.
minimum,
yeah,
where we go, oh, geez. And we're just like, we're not in pain for us. We're in pain because the item, once again, the consignment opportunity. And I want to make another point about that. You know, the consignment opportunity had a cost of $3,000 and it sold for 8, but there were 10 paddles in the air
Hmm.
at 5,500 and it could have raised 25,000 net, but
Yeah,
it didn't. You know,
that's
we
it.
just
mm-hmm.
and the auctioneer in that case thinks, in this illustration, thinks they did their job by selling the item for the most they could. But this is just a word of the wise. Once again, it doesn't have to be our items, of course. If you're working with any consignment opportunity item or company therein, make sure your auctioneer knows that you're, you know, make sure you're communicating this. It's like, okay, this is what we need for the item. This is where we want it to sell. You know, this is what the organization told us, you know, told us that this can be sold as many times as we like, and this is the right price point and all that good, you know, and just make sure that's articulated properly, because not everyone's like Jordan, where where they'll recognize in the moment that we can sell this item, you know, 10 times, which, you know, you've done with us, you know, at
Yeah.
events
That's it.
and done it
Yeah.
multiple
Well, it
times.
becomes a game changer for the event because
Well,
something
think
that
about the
they
energy of 10 people
that
winning and that
that
much
they
money being raised,
well
you know, it's
they
like,
were already they're in, you know, you know, the expectation, and we always try to tamp down expectations to say,
sure.
you know, you sell this one maybe 2 times, here's what it should bring. And let's say it's 50 to 100% over what the reserve is. So let's just say it's $2,000. That means it's going to sell 3 to 4,000. But you get somebody, an auctioneer, and they run somebody up to $8,000.
Yeah, we're just like, no.
Well, yeah, and or vice versa, you know, and this is, I'm telling on myself, this is about probably 20 years ago. Somebody brought and they said, "Hey, we've got this item here. This is what we got to have for it. You got
Yeah.
to have this."
Yep.
It was like $3,000. I sold it for 3,250, something like that. Thought I had just rung the bell, had done a great job because that's what she told me she needed. And it was tough. I mean, it was just one of those deals. But they had $3,000 in it.
Yeah.
They said, "Look, you know," and they didn't tell me that. That's just what she said. And
Yeah.
because as an auctioneer, you only know what you know. You know, you may not do it, especially if you don't do it all the time. Now, I've done enough now, I understand it, but it's a whole different thing. But just like Jordan does. So we're looking because, you know, if you start off selling it at $100 and, you know, you get up to, it seems like that's a lot of sponge. But if you start off at asking for 10 and you set it in at 2 and then it winds up at 4 and then you sell it, you know, to 15 times, again, it's just all those things that go into it. And that's why this is, you've got to make sure that you're getting the heart surgeon to operate on your heart and not the ear, nose, and throat guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need ear, nose,
Yeah.
and throat. They're great. Cattle
Yeah.
auctioneers are awesome at selling cattle. Car auctioneers are phenomenal at selling cars. Some of those people are excellent at doing galas, but not all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
So you really got to get that experience level in here and talk to them, because it does make a change. You know, Jordan, I think you were telling the story a while back about you did an event. I don't remember where it was, somewhere. I think it was you had told me this story. And they had a local person who had done the auction for several years, many years, you know, volunteered and everything. And they thought, well, we're going to just shake it up and do it. And they brought you in and you absolutely crushed every record they had ever had. And the reason was, it wasn't because the other person wasn't good. That's not it. It's just that they just weren't, it wasn't their element. They were
They
really
weren't you.
good at selling estate sales. They're really good at, you know, maybe selling real estate. But when it came to this, it's just a different animal. It just is. And,
Yep.
you know, give all that hard work that you do, all that effort, all the time, you know, you take all the volunteer hours, the board, the committee, and your hours and your staff, you pour all that into it. That's a lot. It is a
Yeah.
tremendous amount. And that's why this live auction thing's really,
Yeah, don't fall short on this piece.
hey,
Yeah,
I
for
want
sure.
to ask
Yeah.
something about
I want to I
timing.
want to ask folks 4 questions while we got
Yeah,
Jordan.
please
Sorry
do.
for
I got
interrupting.
two
Yeah.
things I want to hit real quick. I'd like to
Yeah.
get your take on. What about the timeline? Where in an event do you like to see the live auction and the fundraising happen?
Great
Great
question. I'd
question.
say for me, there's two schools of thought, but for me, definitely live auction before the funded need
Okay.
by far. The reason why is if you go straight into the funded needs, so if you imagine this, guests have just finished dinner, you got someone from the organization go, I hope you enjoyed your dinner, ladies and gentlemen. Let's welcome our fundraising auctioneer, Jordan Campbell, up to the stage. I get up onto the stage, and if I go straight into the emotional funded need, then immediately the tone is being set that okay, this is going to be quite monotone. This guy, there's no energy from the outgo from the get go. But if I start with the live auction, immediately they're thrust into this fun, energetic. Their hearts are racing as I explained earlier, and then you follow it up by converting that energy into the emotional side of things. So I would definitely say the live auction first. Now, when? Well, the sooner you can have it to after finishing dinner, the better. Ideally, immediately after dinner, because a full tummy is a happy tummy and a generous tummy. Never do the fundraising before people have eaten, because
Great
people get
stuff.
hangry.
Yeah.
I get
Yeah.
hangry. I know the feeling.
Yeah.
So I would have it immediately after dinner, as early as possible after dinner, making sure that all the plates, or at least 80% of the entree plates, have been cleared. Occasionally, you can close the bar so there's no distractions whatsoever. You've got the full attention. I would have it at first, Jason.
Cool. We always talk about just generally in
Love
coaching,
that.
just to have it done by 9 p.m. If you can have all your fundraising done by then, but if you're starting your auction, at 9 o'clock, you're going to lose some people because by that time, in other words, fundraise first, party after. Because we see a lot of times, and I know you've seen it too. Probably 9 o'clock kind of becomes the witching hour, and everybody starts pulling stakes. They got to go home. They got to drive. They got kids. They've got an early day the next day, and that it just kind of starts. You start losing people, and
And guess
so
what else happens? They by that point they might have had few too many
I
yes.
tipples
was
by
gonna
that
say, what's
point.
the term? What's the term for that in Scotland?
Well, I call it. It's not a Scottish term. It's my term. It's the third drink sweet spot. So
Mhm.
when people are on their third drink, that's when you should start the fundraising because you're not too over the edge, but you're starting to get a little buzz. And I'm not advocating drinking at these events, of course,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
guests do. They're there to have
Yeah.
a good time.
Yeah.
And but if you do it after 9 p.m., as Jason says, well, at that stage you've completely lost them.
We want to make sure they're just right near the legal limit for fundraising. You know what I
Just
mean?
right.
That's
Hey,
awesome.
Jordan,
So good.
anything, and again, if anybody has a question, and
Yeah, we
just so
got
you know,
Jordan. We have an expert here.
yeah,
Please
we got
ask
him for
Feel
another
away.
free.
10 minutes. Anything else that you think that you've been seeing, maybe a trend that you've seen, and not a
Mm,
fad? Because we talked
mm.
about this last week. There are fads and there are trends. Like one of the fads is not doing a live auction. We're only going to do a fund a need,
Urgh.
and we talked about
Urgh.
that. But trends, like a trend that we've seen, over the past few years, like you said, there might be 7 or 8 items where before there might be 15 or 20. And now
Yeah.
we're seeing less items, more impact. Just
Mhm.
what other trends are you seeing that maybe that have changed that everybody might want to pay attention to?
Well, yeah,
Great
you're right
question.
that they have reduced. There are fewer live auction items now, and one of the thought process behind that is if we have too many live auction items, will we cannibalize our funded need?
Great question.
Will
Hmm.
we take money from the fund in need? Um, yes and no. My general answer is no. If you've got a good auctioneer, and not just the auctioneer, if the event has been put together by the committee really well, if every touch point has been covered, if everyone feels engaged and part of it, then you're going to raise money no matter what, no matter whether you have a fund in need and a live auction and a runaround and this and that, you will raise money, I believe. When it comes to having too many live auction items, that is where I start to say, okay, enough's enough. Because if you have, I would say, 10 plus live auction items, I think you lose the shine of the existing live auction items.
Great call.
Plus, it becomes kind of never ending for the audience. The audience lose their. We live in the modern world. We're
Well,
all on our
10 plus
phones.
is
We
over a
cannot.
half hour. 10 plus is over a half hour of just live auction items. That's a
Exactly.
lot. Yeah, yeah.
And it's like going into an ice cream parlor and there's 100 different flavors. You're going to be in there for a while deciding what you want. And no matter what you choose, you're going to be thinking you should have chosen a different flavor because you had too
Yeah.
many choices. It's the
Paralysis
same
by
principle for
analysis.
this. Yeah, exactly. Paralysis
Yeah.
by analysis. And
Yeah.
so that is a trend that's been happening. I think that's here to stay. I think it's less of a fad to have fewer live auction items and more of a trend. The runaround, obviously that's been around for a while, that
Yeah.
last level at the fund of need. But it depends how you approach it. Every auctioneer has a different style for the runaround. My style is very much literally a runaround, making it into kind of like a horse race. I want the feel in the room to be, I'm commentating on like a horse race. Bit of 5-1-2 around the outside, it's just overtaking 6-2-5. 6-2-5, you're in the lead now, Brian knows. And it becomes this, that feel when you're watching the Kentucky Derby, for example, and you hear
Right.
or the Grand National in the UK, you hear the commentators and you feel slowly revved up, revved up, revved up, revved up. And that's why the runaround is quite popular, I believe, is you can raise a lot of money from the runaround, but more importantly, is it's the bookend to the evening.
A great
You've had
night.
the high of the
Yeah.
live, you've had the emotional low, for lack of a better term, of the fund and need, and then the runaround brings people back up. And then when they leave, they're on this buzz and they go, I'm coming back next year.
Can't
I
wait for
love
the
this
next one.
course.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. That's the
Exactly.
key.
I
Mhm.
love that. That's really good. Hey, everybody. Once again, just a last call for questions. We have an expert here, has done this on
Any
5
questions?
continents. Please, please, any questions? And also, if you're watching this as a recording on YouTube, go ahead, hit the subscribe button and leave us a comment and a question for Jordan. We'll make sure it gets to him. While we're talking about it, Jordan, tell folks where they can find you, please. The easiest way to find you and to reach out to you and all that good stuff. You can disclose your phone number if you want, email, whatever you like.
Yeah, and we'll
Who
put it
knows?
all. And when we send
We
out
will
the
certainly
recording,
have it in the show notes. Yep.
we'll put
Yep.
it in the show notes when we send out that as well. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
want to make sure
But
everybody
yeah, you
knows.
can find me at my website, jordan-campbell.net, or jordan-campbell.net. I don't know what you say in America. Is it dash or
Both.
hyphen?
Both.
Both. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jordan-campbell.net,
Yeah.
or jordan@jordan-campbell.net is for my
Perfect.
email.
Awesome.
Yeah, any questions, any support you need, absolutely let me know. No matter where you are, I cover various areas. So let me know, and happy to hear from you.
That's awesome.
All
Thanks,
right.
brother, for sharing.
Well,
Appreciate
guys,
that.
I got something I've got to do. I got a little something we got to do. We got to
We
do
got to
the
give something away. We got to give
Oh,
something away.
here we
We're
go.
going to share your screen. First off,
here
we're
we
going to share your
go.
screen.
And
Nice.
basically, we've got a winner, Sarah Grote. Sarah, you are the
Oh,
winner here.
cool.
So I want you just to reach
Hang in
out,
there,
and
Sarah. We're
touch
going to
the
spin this
screen
wheel.
because we're going to spin the wheel. Thank you. And here it goes. We're going to see what Sarah wins today.
HGA bucks, Jordan. We're a bank now. And
I love
we give
it.
away,
You guys
yeah.
have really evolved.
200.
200 HGA
Congratulations.
bucks, Sarah. Okay. Far
So
out.
Sarah, you can use that towards any item for your fundraiser. And so we thank you so much for being here. And
Yep.
we really appreciate it. We appreciate everybody being here. And
Yeah.
thank you so much, Jordan. It
Yeah.
really means a lot that you would come and spend your time with us and share all this.
We owe you lunch, brother, for spending so much time with us recently. So when we're in Atlanta, lunch is on
No
us,
problem.
or dinner. Jason and I like dinner too. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Guys, it's an absolute pleasure. You guys are great at what you're doing, and I love these webinars and your podcasts as well. So fantastic for taking that leap. I know it's always a bit daunting to try something new, but you're killing it, and thanks for
Thanks,
having me.
brother. Thanks,
Appreciate it.
brother. It means the world. And yeah, all the best to you and your family, brother. Thank you so much for the time. It means so much to us. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll
Thanks,
see
guys.
you all next week. And for episode 148, have a great Thursday and enjoy more webinars. See ya.
All right.
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks,
Thanks,
all.
Jordan. Talk to you
We'll see
soon,
you
brother.
Bye
guys.
now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.